Hey everybody, this is Ryan at MidNite. I want to show you how to go through the local app. Today I'm going to show you how to use the local app to change all your settings. I just basically want to show you what every little button is on the local app, what it does, and why you'd want to change it. So for this series of videos, we're going to assume you're already connected and you've got a screen like this with the little green circle over here and the classic that you want to talk to and adjust. So with that in mind, if you don't, we will have a series of videos about connecting your classic to the computer. But we're going to assume that it's already connected for now. We're going to pick Office right here. So we're going to go to View. And this pops up the main screen. And what you're going to see up here is the name of the classic. You're going to notice there's a little arrow here if you got more than one classic. You can click that and you can do a quick switch between classics versus having to go back to the minimize screen. So we'll go back to Office. Now up here in the top you've got the minimize button. You click that, it takes you back to the minimize screen. So go back to View. So those are the two quick move buttons to get to different classics if you have multiples. Now I want to go through the gauges real quick. This gauge on the left right here is the input voltage at the moment. So in this case you see mine is running about 100 volts. And this would be the VMP, or the maximum power point voltage, because as you can see over here we're actually charging the battery. So if this was early in the morning or late at night, or if the classic was resting, this number would be a little higher, and it would say that would be your VOC. And then in the middle of the night you're going to see about half to two-thirds of the battery voltage here, and that's normal because the charge controller has a bleed resistor on its input to keep a little voltage in the capacitors. We'll move on to the energy dial. And what that is kilowatt hours so far. It's a running total. It resets every night at midnight to 0 and starts to count for the new day. So this is what we've done so far today, is 1.2 kilowatt hours. And then in the middle, the big gauge, is instantaneous watts. So at this moment you can see that we're making 132 watts. It just changed. This is just auto scales. So you see this goes up to a kilowatt. If we had a big array on this, as it went over 1,000, the needle would push and it would get another 1,000, so go to 2,000, go to 3,000, so on and so forth. So it will auto scale for you on a larger array. But that's your instantaneous watts, or power if you will. Over here, next gauge is battery voltage, fairly explanatory. That is the actual battery voltage right at this moment. And then the last gauge says battery amps, and that is just what it says. It's the amperage going out of the classic into the towards the battery. Of course, there's loads as well, so it's going to run the loads first, and then also run charge the battery. Now up here, I do want to point out this little light here is the auxiliary 1, and this one's auxiliary 2. If either auxiliary was on, those little lights would turn green. When they're off, they turn gray like they are. Now, before we go through the buttons, this is the main status screen, we'll call it, the overview, status overview, and this is what comes up by default. You'll get the screen here. You'll get the model of the classic, if it's a 150, 200, 250. You'll get what mode it's in. In this case, we're in solar mode, and we actually have it turned on. So if we had it in solar mode, but had the mode off, it would show off right there. And then the last line tells us what our charge status is, and as you can see here, we're in float MPPT, meaning that we've had a big load on. I've had the actual air conditioner running in this office, and I've dragged the batteries down quite a bit, so you'll see they're in float MPPT. Still charging, but not enough light to get full again. So now we'll go down to the next screen here, and this is the auxiliary screen. And just like it says, this is auxiliary 1 and auxiliary 2. You can see I have auxiliary 1 set for vent fan high. I have it set for auto, and it's currently off right now because the battery is too low in voltage. Aux 2 is set for whiz bang junior. It's set to auto, and it's currently off right now as well. The screen up here, if you have the whiz bang junior, will show up, and my whiz bang junior is not reporting right now. I've got to dig into that. But if it was, this 0 would be a number, probably around 9 amps for my case, because I don't really have any loads on at the moment. Be 9 amps. This is actually into the battery through the shunt. So that's your system amps, what's actually going in or out of the battery at the moment. The next number is the net amp hours, a running tally, either positive or negative, depending on how you've been running the battery. And underneath that is the remaining amp hours in that battery bank. which is temperature compensated. So if the battery gets colder, the amp hours go up. If the battery gets warmer, the amp hours go down. I'm sorry, it's just the opposite. If the batteries get colder, the amp hours go down. If the batteries get warmer, the amp hours go up. And that is adjustable. We will talk about that when we get to the config screen. And the last line is the state of charge of the batteries. With Whiz-Bang Jr. you get a full battery capacity meter out of that Whiz-Bang Jr. And because mine's not actually reporting, it's stuck on 100% right now. But that's where you would read that percentage on your batteries. It will also show up on the display of a standard classic. And the last field is temperatures, and you'll notice we have FET temperatures, which is the switching FETs. Then we have PCB temperature, which is the circuit board right beside the switching FETs. And then we have the battery temperature, which is read from the temperature sensor that comes with the classic, the blue temperature sensor. And those are all in Celsius, and unfortunately they have to stay in Celsius because the classic only does Celsius, and we don't want to do the conversion in the local app. Okay, so now we'll go to the alerts tab on the status, and you'll notice there are no alerts. If there was an alert, you'd see an icon up here on the dashboard, and it would also tell you what that alert is right here. If it was a information only, the stuff would stay green and the little icon would come up. If it was a warning like amp limit reached or something like that, this would turn yellow and the icon would come up. You can see what it was. Or if it's something bad like arc fault or ground fault, the screens would turn red and you could come down here to alerts and see what it is. So now the next tab in status is info, and in the info tab this is basically just a little bit of information about the actual classic. So it's got the classic model, classic MAC address, device ID, IP address, and the most important one is your firmware versions, as you can see here, 1890 and 1839. One of the other neat things over here is you can get your absorb time, your equalize time, and the last VOC. So that's kind of nice. If you're like, I wonder how long I've been in absorb, you can come here and look. It starts at the max of the timer and counts down to 0. So my timer is set for 2 hours, and as you can see, I need to do a full absorb because I'm in float right now and batteries are low. So if I was to hit the absorb voltage, this would start counting down from 2 hours. So that would tell you how much time you've got left in the absorb cycle. And like it says last VOC, that's exactly what it says. The last time I did a full sweep of the array, it found my VOC to be 118 volts. So again, basically that's the status tab, and we went through overview, alerts, and info. I'm going to conclude this as part 1. We're going to come back and do the data tab.